Dear friends, welcome back. In this video, we shall be taking up the very first remedy of our course. And the name of that remedy is Aconite napellus. You will soon discover why aconite is so important to be taken up as the very first remedy. Aconite and homeopathy have a very close relationship. As a matter of fact, one of the great writers, Clark, has said that aconite is probably more closely associated with the rise and progress of homeopathy than any other remedy. And why is that so? Because it led to the demise of bloodletting. You may be well aware that bloodletting was a very common practice in allopathic medicine. As a matter of fact, it was recommended well into the 1940s and 1950s. And William Osler, who is the father of modern medicine, also advocated its use in various conditions. Now, way back in Hahnemann's time, more than 250 years ago, he was very opposed to these cruel practices. Some of you may be aware that George Washington, the President of America, in fact died because he was bled to such an extent that there was no blood left in his body. Continuing further, we discover that if cinchona or quina was the Newton's apple of homeopathic discovery, then aconite was the remedy by means of which Hahnemann was able to meet most of the conditions which in his day were treated by bloodletting. Once again, this is from Clark, from the Dictionary of Materia Medica, and I hope you have access to that online or maybe a paper copy with you. All of us have studied in earlier modules that it was the cinchona bark that led Hahnemann to discover the principle of similarity or the law of similars, which laid the foundation for homeopathy. But very few of us know that it was aconite that established the practice because he was able to overcome that cruel and inhuman practice of bloodletting. These are some of the indications that were used by the doctors in those days and even much later when bloodletting was used. Pneumonia, dyspnea, sunstroke, convulsions, asphyxia, pericarditis, and many more, including severe headaches and migraines. As we said earlier, if it was quina, which was the apple, like it was for Newton, then in that case, the authority of homeopathy was established by the use or the judicious and homeopathic use of aconite. Aconite napellus is actually a very deadly poison. In fact, hunters used to use arrows which were tipped with the juice of this particular plant in order to kill wolves. Or they would lace it in the meat that was left in order to kill wolves who would be invading the farms of many farmers in northern latitudes. The mechanism of its poisoning is based on the fact that it disrupts the iron balance of the heart muscles, and that causes hypotension, which is low blood pressure, tachycardia, which is a fast heartbeat, and ventricular arrhythmias. There is no known antidote to this particular poison. Aconite is a remedy that acts when a person is in a state of fight or flight, something that is very essential for survival. We have seen in a previous video lesson that our normal state is one in which we are relaxed, we are in a state of rest and digest, and that is what we can call as a state of being or just a state of I am. That is the level at which we have our social engagements. We are flexible, we are adaptive, we are coherent, we feel energized, and we are in a very stable state of mind. However, if we are encountering any difficulty which is of a sudden nature, and that can be either physical or mental, In that case, what happens is that ground level is raised because of irritation or frustration, the response of anger to a situation, or even getting into a fit of rage. This is going to cause a person to respond with a fight or face the situation. But if the situation is a little more deep, which causes concern or worry or fear, or it can even lead to panic, a state of panic or terror. In that case, the person may respond with the response of flight, that means simply running away. But there is still an element that the person feels that he can face the situation. So instead of the state of I am, the person is now in a state of I can. But what happens if this stress level keeps rising? As we saw, if the stress level rises, we first come into flight and fight. And of course, naturally, the situation also ebbs. But there is a threshold above which a person will not respond either with a fight or flight, but will simply freeze. And that leads to immobility, a state of collapse, shutdown, or dissociation. We shall see that there are other remedies which deal with this situation of freeze. We are dealing with Aconite, and that essentially is a remedy that comes in handy when a person is in the survival mode and is in a situation of fight or flight. And we shall see how. The fight or flight symptoms will show all over the body. For example, if you see the eyes, the pupils will dilate, the lungs will start breathing deeper and in quick succession. Peristalsis of the food movement through your GI tract will slow down. And the blood pressure will increase because the blood vessels dilate to carry more blood so that you are able to respond either to fight or to run away from that situation. The muscles become more tense and it can even lead to trembling. The output of the digestive enzymes will decrease and the heart will start beating faster and harder. The blood vessels constrict. It could lead to chills and the mouth becomes dry because there is less saliva. So if you take a note of all these symptoms, you will find that Aconite will serve you well. In your study of remedies, you must also include and understand the tissue affinities, with which parts of the body, that is organs, or with which tissues is a remedy related. Aconite is principally related with the serous membrane, which includes the pleura, that means the membrane that covers the lungs, pericardium, the membrane that surrounds the heart, and peritoneum is one of the largest serous membranes, which covers an area of almost that equal to the entire skin, and it covers the abdominal cavity. So we'll see more about the serous membrane in the next video. It also involves muscle tissue, and the symptoms are typically that of being sore or bruised or burning. And it is also having an affinity for muscular tissues which are involved in rheumatism and tension of the arteries. So if you keep this in mind, it will help you to understand the symptomatology when you have to choose this remedy. I'll now summarize what we have seen in this video. First of all, we saw that Aconite, the first remedy that we have undertaken to study, has a very important place in the development of homeopathy. In fact, it helped Hahnemann to displace the cruel and inhuman practice of bloodletting entirely, long before the allopathic school of medicine had done. They had continued bloodletting in allopathy all the way up to the late 1940s and early 1950s. We also saw the effects of poisonings of aconite and how it works on the iron balance of the heart tissue and the symptomatology that it creates because of that. The next important point was that aconite comes in handy in a situation where it's a matter of survival. It's a very quick acting remedy and we shall be looking at it more deeply later. And we also took a look at the tissue affinity, in particular serous membrane, muscle tissue, and in cases of tension of arteries. That brings us to the end of this lesson. And in the next video, we shall take up a study of the symptoms where aconite proves useful. Once again, I would like to remind you, the symptoms for which aconite is useful are those symptoms which aconite will produce in a healthy person. Essentially, that is what our law of similars is all about. So thank you very much for your attention and see you once again in the next video where we shall continue with our study of aconite. Until then, bye bye.